Okay, y'all, so this is like my third go. I have been challenged by many people over the past few weeks to video and or even do maybe a live Facebook, live Instagram feed with some things that have been on my heart, but it's a little scary. And yes, I do like to talk, and I am definitely labeled as more of an extrovert, but funnily enough, that's kind of what I want to talk about because I haven't always been this way. It is something that has changed in my life. And as I was younger, I got really stuck into more wanting to hide and not be recognized and not be seen. And I didn't like that attention. And whenever I got attention through whatever, sometimes really good things, often, I would rather just go and hide under a table or something. So over time, the Lord has actually really done some good work in my life. And I broke out of those boxes that people put me in, that I put myself in. And I have felt the Lord removing the labels off of my life and speaking more of His words and His identity over me. And so just recently, actually, I was sharing on this with a group of women. And so it really impacted me. And it's kind of, it's funny how those things, you feel like you're just talking to somebody else, and you're really, what you're saying is really for them, but then as you kind of sit back and think about it or write it out or whatever, you realize it's a lot of the times it's for you. And so this one ended up really being for me, but it was also is something that is very encouraging, and I think that other people can really identify with. We were talking about labels, and we were talking about how we want to allow the Lord to define us in this new season, and how there's so many things that have defined us and are trying to define us, whether it's been something as a child or as a teenager, something that is recent, even maybe through workmates or a leader in our lives, and often even ourselves, things that we take on as who we are, and how we act or respond to something, and then it starts to actually become our identity. And they're not always negative, but they absolutely can limit us. And often, though, they are negative. Often the things that we've allowed to identify us and keep us limited, and hold us back, are very negative things. And so I was sharing this, and in my mind, I just had this picture of this big brick wall. And on the brick wall were these words that were just tagged. You could see that this was a place that somebody had trespassed. They had not been invited to come and to create some beautiful mural. Instead, they had broken in and trespassed and then tagged something that was actually quite dark and definitely not encouraging and not positive. And I could see different words on there, and just had that feeling that this was something that was quite painful and hurtful and very confining. And in that moment, just as fast as I saw that first picture of the wall, I could see like hands, these big hands coming down with like spray cans and just spray painting over the top of all these tagged words. And and I realized it was God's hands, and he was just spray painting, and he was taking these words that were negative and hurtful, and he was turning them into positive and truth, and just kindness. I could just feel that sense of kindness and love in that scene, and it was like just this beautiful creation, and so colorful, and actually like completely blew my mind as I was sitting there watching how he could take something and turn that word into something positive. So like victim became victorious, and hurt became something that said like hopeful in it, and there was just so many different words he was just changing right there in front of me, and he was creating this beautiful picture. And so in that, I was reminded of something that I wrote out a while back about that God is not finished creating. He is still creator, and he is still creating. He's a creative God. And sometimes I think we get kind of stuck like, oh yeah, he created the world, and like, okay, now here it is, and he's done. But he has shown me over and over and over again that he is still creating. He is still creating life. He is still creating beauty. And he is still creating joy. And he is still changing, taking those things that are old and making them into new. And so here again was this great picture of him doing that. And I just had these words go through my mind that if he can still take ashes and turn them into beauty, he can certainly take these negative tagged words and anything that has like labeled us, and tried to define us, in order to imprison us really and hold us back. He can take those things and he can make them into something that is beautiful and that brings life and that brings joy and that brings acceptance, and his word is better. And so anyway, so I have shared this recently with the high schoolers and junior high schoolers at the school that I work at, and again, even as I was sharing that, I could just feel the Lord saying, you no longer live in fear, and you live in faith. And you no longer live under all of this pain or these wounds, but instead, you live healed and as a warrior. And so I just want to take this time to really encourage you that if you have been tagged, because we actually all have been, that the Lord has a better word for you, and he will take those ugly tagged painful words that have actually been lies, and he will bring truth, and he will create something beautiful for you. And I want to just speak those out, that you are loved and you are accepted and you are chosen, and that as we invite the Lord into our lives and invite him into this place to come and to take what was meant for harm, to actually see him heal those places and to bring something good and glorious. And to change your perspective of that wall, and to allow him to define who you are and speak identity over you, instead of what others have said or that you have said even over yourself, the things that we have bought into. And sometimes maybe they have a little bit of truth. I mean, I really do have a loud laugh, so that's true. But God wants me to be able to use that and see that as a joyful thing, and as a wonderful thing, and as a blessing, and actually as a gift, and not a curse, and not something that's annoying, and not something to reject. And so it was funny because even as I came back from sharing, I went to my office and I sat down, and instantly I remembered this pretty traumatic event that happened to me when I was in high school, of pulling up at school and seeing on the side of the gym wall, which happened to be brick, that just had my name, and it said Kim Yates, that's my maiden name, is a, and it had very bad words. And I remember in that moment, besides being shocked and absolutely embarrassed and devastated and wanting to get back in the car and leave, I remember thinking in that moment, like, I am not that. But as I stared at it, the more I looked at it, the more shame I began to feel, and the more I actually began to kind of wear that and take that on. And, still to this day, I don't know who did that. And the maintenance people came, or whoever came and cleaned it off. But I mean, it had already made an impression. And I realized the other day, like the Lord was saying, I have given you this word to share with other people, but I've given you this word to actually heal some things that you have, you've allowed to come and identify you and define you. And that even though I'm like almost 51, and that has been well over 30 years ago, that there's some residue. And so I invite you to take this journey with me of inviting the Lord to come and to look at that wall of you, and to see what words you've been tagged with, and to allow Him to come and to create even those things, to turn them into something beautiful, and to create this incredible mural and masterpiece of art with them, to speak truth and to speak life and to speak love and beauty and everything else that is good. And so anyway, I bless you with that, and I hope that this helps you on your journey. And I just declare, like those things that we've been tagged with, they don't define us. God defines us.